this one morning, I remember I just made my coffee. I was stepping out my little door, and I have the oats in one hand, the coffee in the other, and there was an owl. Don't know what kind of owl, desert owl. Just kind of touched the top of my head and went into my hut. Now, I have 3 people in this place. Most people have 4. Now, there's 4 walls. It went straight to the back, flapped on the wall, flapped over the other guy, flapped over the other guy, and then perched directly over my bed. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna fucking die. Like, this is a bad omen. Like, maybe I need to cut this out completely. But it also, the owl is a symbol of wisdom. And being that this was 3 months in, I was terrified. Honestly, I was like, this is not good. Maybe I should put this whole thing down. But when it perched directly over my bed, and I have pictures of it, it felt sort of a calming way. But I was supposed to be on my way to go meet my guys, go do our early morning physical exercise and whatnot. And I'm like, how do I get this thing out of here? And I don't want to shoo it now, because technically I was inviting it in, and now I'm feeling thanked that it would accept my offering, we'll say. Now that it's perched over my bed, I'm not sure if I want to keep it here. That's a bad omen, and I'm going to die. Or if I want to shoo it out, like, so I can get to my thing, and at the same time, like, if it is a good omen, I definitely don't want to shoo it out. So I was kind of torn between that whole thing. That helped me kind of, it screwed me up for most of the day, but it helped me kind of solidify what I wanted to do. Being that I didn't have much else that I could be doing at the time, I could focus a lot into studies and teaching and mentoring and that kind of thing. And I was already in a leadership position anyways, so this gave me kind of one of those things, kind of an out. So I put a lot of my focus into that, and I said, yeah, I'll go through with this.
Okay, everyone, välkommen. Welcome to Uslaga Saga. This is the 3rd episode of Getting to Know the Cast. It's the 3rd episode, right? Yep. Yeah, and today, very special guest, Aphelion Drif. I've known him for quite some time, and most of you here have known him for quite some time as well. And there's going to be a bunch of good questions here that I'm going to have for him as well, the viewers watching, because I know a lot of people in the armed forces, not just in the U.S. but around the world. And he has organized these kinds of meetings and spiritual Norse pagan gatherings while he was overseas on Air Force bases, if I remember right. So I'm going to be looking forward to ask some questions about that, and I think the viewers will have some valuable things that they will get from this talk as well. So thank you, Dri, for coming. And is there anything else you would like to say about your background that people should know right away?
First of all, I'd like to say, obviously you're welcome, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and explain my story, my background, and how I got started on this path. One thing that I would like to say, though, it was not a Air Force base, although I did have multiple different branches that I was in communications with that were trying to get understanding of the pagan, heathen, animist ways because of the new inclusion for the armed forces, the allowance of other type secular beliefs. So I was personally on a military base that was primarily Army, but yes, it had multiple branches on it. And then during my time teaching, leading, and being a part of that mentorship of others practicing the faith was, and communication with multiple countries, multiple branches, and such on.
Yeah, we'll get into that now. Could you maybe list, I don't know if this is top secret stuff, but are you allowed to list off some of the places you were stationed?
Also, I'm not really too sure exactly how much should be said. So I'll just say that I was in communications with 7 different locations globally, 4, maybe 5 separate countries, and 3 branches. I didn't have any Navy personnel, but may as well. Marines, Air Force, and Army were communicating with me as to better help them understand this new influx of pagan soldiers and kind of help to vet the process. So, yeah.
Can you
So
name
no-
the continent or continents that this was taking place on with the communications, or is that too much to ask?
I was speaking with people in Korea, America, obviously, the Near East, multiple locations, and believe there was another Air Force personnel, Italy.
Go ahead, Thor, sorry.
No, that's it. That's the next thing I was going to ask. Yeah, but you hosted it. Was maybe we should start with get into that a bit later. Maybe the main thing that people would want to know is how you got into it. I've known quite a few people who have got into it. At least half of them just wanted to, so they could get the beard exemption, so they could grow the beard while in the military. But how did you get into it, and do you see any similarities of how the others got into it as well?
Yes, the beard in uniform is a definitely hot topic amongst whether it's civilians, ex-military, or currently serving. I guess I'll start from the very beginning, if I may. Name is Aphelion Drif, or what I go by here, and yeah, I chose that because Aphelion is basically a returning to the sun worship, and things like the Drif being an Old Norse language for a gathering or persons, crowds, such on. So hopefully a reemergence of solar worship and such. How I began is a long story. If we want to jump straight to the military side or upbringing and roots.
It's your episode, so whatever you want to do.
I mean, I can go on and on. So I'll be pretty brief when it comes to that. Early childhood. Mother was born and raised Catholic. Her mom and dad separated, and she didn't want to push that theology onto myself if she wasn't going to be seeing her parents put it on. She didn't want to push that theology on us because she felt it was unnecessary that her parents pushed it onto her, although they didn't, follow their own dogma. So I felt I shouldn't waste the opportunity to search around, find out what best fits myself. And I researched a whole bunch of different religions, primarily the monotheistic ones to begin with, and then I just kind of fell in love with history, nature, and I kind of attributed that to the last name. My last name translates to of the fields, and I figured, okay, well, I'm just kind of a nature boy, no big deal. But as time went on and just being more at peace away from most of civilization, truthfully, I had a lot of troubles, we'll say, growing up. So I like to get away as much as possible, and I found peace in that, and I found that it was a good way to get away from the bad upbringing, the bad things going through. Also, having a, say, troubled background, I had doubt in the monotheistic faiths when it comes to the overseeing, all-loving, caring type. So I was kind of put off by that sort of thing and searching just for, I guess you'd say, a truth, or at least something that can answer some of the questions that I had when it comes to who we are, where we're going, and why we're here. As I grew up, I remember coming across, funny as it may sound, the movie Conan the Barbarian. I'm sure most of you guys have seen it, right? If not, if you're a viewer and you haven't seen it, you're a youngin', check that out. It's a great movie, but I don't want to get too much into the backgrounds of certain things like that, and I guess I can't really harp on the LARPing of the TV show Vikings too much. But either way, I would watch it almost every night just because it was something that I already knew, so I could fall asleep at any part and not really worry about when to turn it off. I knew the whole movie through and through. One of the things that stood out to me, I guess, in that movie was the pennant that he'd worn, and it kind of signified the tribe that he was from. It looked semi-similar to a solar pennant. It was kind of the 8 ways So yeah, the seasons and such on like that had a bunch of, I guess you'd say, thieves and outcasts, which was kind of my group already. And there's wizards and wanderers and such like that. And one of the things that I really respected about that is there's a meeting between Conan and Subutai, and they discuss the gods between each other. And it's kind of like almost a battle of wits, but it was respectfully done. And they kind of say, what gods do you pray to? Oh, I pray to this. What gods do you pray to? I pray to that. And they kind of measure swords, we'll say, just for a second. And I kind of took that as how I'd like to approach others when getting into faith discussions, because I noticed it clashes hard quick. If I say, well, I don't believe that, people constantly want to defend it. And it doesn't matter what background they're from. So I figured, okay, let me respectfully understand each person's background to the best of my ability, mull it around, take what I can from it, and such on. Fell in love with history after that, and kind of just put away the theology, even mindset, until, I don't know, I was close to 18, met a girl who was a Catholic, and young guy, impressionable, really wanted to mingle with this lady or whatnot, and went down that road for a while. I searched into Catholicism because it was the only one that made me fear death. If you've ever been to Catholic church or something like that, Christianity is pretty forgiving, but when it comes to Catholicism, you're like, oh, you're going straight to hell. Like, I did like 17 bad things today that'll condemn me. I stuck around for that for close to 4 years until she and I separated, and then obviously I separated immediately from those binds. And yeah, I went back into my studies, and I mean, I got deep all the way into like early man and the understanding of, I guess, psychology of the hunter-gatherer, farmer type of mindset. Connecting some dots from so far back, you kind of get the understanding of why a person or persons would want to give thanks and reverence to basically nature and deify and understand these things to the best of their abilities. So that led me into the animistic path and such. There's quite a few different ones. In fact, primarily most of them, I would say, stem from animism at least. But there's quite a few of them, mostly Northern Europe, mid to South African, some Near East, and Mediterranean, that all kind of have roots in animistic beliefs, or at least the storytelling of those sort of things. So I became big in understanding that, Stoicism, philosophy, and just really trying to expand my knowledge to the best of my abilities. When it gets into the later in life, obviously I met the gal at 18, or roughly. I joined the army at 22 years old, so it wasn't very much longer after that. I joined the army, and at that time, I had very long hair. It was down to about my belt line. Like I said, started growing hair before most, so I had a braid in my beard that was about as long as my thumb about the time I joined the army. And the army has its regulations on appearance. So obviously I knew I couldn't wear a braid. I knew I had to have a clean shaven face and those sort of things. And I almost took that as a kick in the gut, because I looked to those things as not only pride in manhood, but my father wore long hair. He had a beard. So it's almost that ancestral lineage. There was a connectedness that I had that I felt I had to sort of sacrifice in order to serve others as well as my own future. So I took that sacrifice. Before I shipped out to go to basic training and whatnot, I shaved my ponytail off. I actually still have it. It's here in the closet. I've been holding it for 18 years. So I took it so that they couldn't take it from me. To me, that'd be a dishonorable act to allow that. I shaved my face and kind of got a little bit of a backlash for showing up that way, because they thought, you think you're already a soldier, huh? And I remember my reply was, no, I'm here so that I can receive. You'll be taking nothing from me. I'm an empty glass at this point. And yeah, either way, that didn't go well. They're there to break you, create a new man out of you, shape you into the image that they'd like to see amongst the rest of the soldiers. Fall in, form up, assimilate. So I kind of hid my heathen ways, we'll say. One of the pagans, or the Wiccans that I had met while overseas, referred to it as being in the broom closet. Obviously, she's Wiccan. I'm not. If that's how she feels like using the term, that by all means, I found it funny, so I still kind of refer to it at times. But yeah. So 2007, I joined the military, and they were super strict on regulations on who and what would be available. Obviously, you can go to Sunday Mass if you were Jewish or Muslim. They had services and such that you could attend, but there was nothing along the lines of earth-based. There was nothing along the lines of nature-based, holistic faiths. Nothing along the lines of animism, paganism, heathenism, and they kind of generalized everything that's not one of, say, those top three as pagan. It took me a while to actually open up about that, because one thing I learned in the military is you don't want to stand out. You don't want to be the best guy. You don't want to be the worst guy. No matter what, that puts a target on your ass. So, as I had said before, just kind of assimilate, keep your head down, be just like the others. About 2017, ended up getting injured while on active duty orders. And that gave me a lot more time to get back into my studies, because I was big in the gym. I was big into exercise and such on the previous deployment. So now I'm going to be down overseas for 9 months with absolutely nothing to do. So I just fell back on old ways, which was studying. And in doing that, I was checking out a lot of, I would say, the native spiritualities, whether it's native to the Americas, the Australias, Africas. I've just continued, my studies outward and onward. And I was really putting things together when it comes to humans and understanding nature and that which is divine in, or as I've come to realize, I guess you'd say, the gods in the everyday sense. So there I am, studying up, doing my thing, and yeah, it just, I read that they were becoming more inclusive, the military that is, about holistic spiritualities, faiths, and they were going to be opening up, like, I guess, an okayance to being openly heathen, pagan, or whatnot in uniform. I didn't want to stand out, same as before, so I kept that to myself, but I kept it in the back of my mind. I definitely would like to express myself how I seem fit, but at the same time, if there's a whole platoon of guys and only one of them sticks out because he's got a beard, like it or not, you're kind of gonna paint that bullseye on yourself. So truthfully, it wasn't until like about 2001 that I got the authorization to wear a beard and uniform, and that's only because I was kind of pressured by our chaplain. And if anybody doesn't understand what a chaplain is, it's basically the priest or head of whatever theology that goes overseas with you to give one, say, their last rites if necessary, or to console them in times of hardship. So the chaplain noticed that I was, let me back it up just a bit. In 2021, when I went overseas on this last mission of mine, there was an advertisement for pagan services, and I had never seen that anywhere before. I'm like, holy shit! Like, yeah, I definitely want to see what this is about. Like, let's see what they're doing. Same as anybody here is like, we'd all like to see that. Like, what are we doing? Is it like a real pagan thing? Are we, doing a Ren fair? Like, where is the line? Like, how does it start and stop? So quietly stopped in, seen like two of those, and the gal that was leading it was saying how she's rotating out, which means that she's got to be going back home soon, and she was going to have to turn the keys to this little trailer that they were holding services in. She's going to have to turn those keys back over. So without someone having the authorization to have those keys, that it was basically going to stop. And I definitely said no to it in the beginning because I guess I'd say I was a little unsure of myself and didn't necessarily want to take on that kind of thing. There was about 6 people, so it wasn't a huge issue. If I look like a jackass in front of 6, that's no big deal. I've definitely done worse. So I was like, I'll be a silent advisor, we'll say, off to the side, and every now and then chime in, because it was primarily like Wicca and a few, you'd say, Norse practitioners, or those that were definitely interested in Norse paganism. Being my interest in all of these things in the past, that was something that I had a pretty good understanding of, or at least that I'd thought at the time. And I would chime in every now and then, just a couple things that were kind of off the way she was saying, because that wasn't, her main studies. I just kind of chime in here and there with, this is kind of more like that, in the most respectful way possible, so not to, call anybody out, especially in front of a group. And she had noticed that I had a pretty good understanding of it. People were receptive of the information I was given. And she was like, yeah, you should really, pursue this. At that time, I had almost no other option but to get right back in the studies as always. I'd found Thor's channel, the Norse Magic and Beliefs channel, not too long before that. And that was definitely a go-to as far as a few other people on YouTube. But given all the reading that had been done, all the searching that had been done in my past, I had to just basically go full bore back into it. Reread everything, rewrite everything, kind of get deep within it. Bought the hell out of my time since I wasn't at the gym anymore. But it went from, say, 6 people on average, say twice a month, sometimes 4 times a month, to roughly 24 people consistently. And I felt a pride in that as well. My chaplain noticed this at the time because, that's his business, to watch over other secular beliefs that are, I guess, on a rising. I can't, take all the credit for it. This is something that, in those times, people were big in the Viking stuff. They wanted more knowledge and information. So I was giving the best of my abilities, given not only the information I had, but those that I'd, reached out to. So my chaplain looked at me, and at that time I was still clean shaven. He was saying, you should actually, go for the bearded uniform. I'll help you write a letter to the general. And it has to go that high in order to get approval, or else it's definitely no good. But again, stick out like a sore thumb. I didn't want to paint that bullseye on myself. But the chaplain himself, he wears a cross on his uniform, like the only person that has that. And he says to me that he wears it like a symbol of his personal faith, so that others can come and seek him for guidance. Given what I was doing and the uptick in that kind of a thing, he was saying that obviously I'm not going to put, like, say, a cross on myself. I mean, I guess you could put, the world tree or something like that. You get a seal on the side, but that's not a thing. So he was like, this could be something for yourself to teach and mentor, and also be a signal to others. So I fought it tooth and nail best I could, ended up going through with it. And yeah, there was kind of a lot that happened after that. But if you guys want to ask any questions before I snowball all the way through this.
What led to the change of heart?
So what led to the change of heart when it comes to...
Well, obviously you just said that you were fighting tooth and nail not to go through with this, and then obviously you did. So what was the specific defining moment that made you change your mind on that particular front? Because I think that's obviously a big deal for, a lot of people that might not want to stick their head out in our modern era for other things that are going on, to find the courage in order to do that, so to speak.
And for such a long time, right? You were in there more than 10 years and kind of kept it to yourself and not even let anyone know about it. But yeah, what kind of led to that after so long?
I mean, I did let people know about it, but it was kind of just more jokingly, subtle hints. It was little things that I'd say, but at the same time, there's so many people that have no idea, even if you told them blatantly. But if, say, you or I were to catch a hint in uniform, you'd be like, that's odd that you know about these things. But one of the change of hearts that I had, and this is something that I definitely haven't told, a large group of people before, is when I received the keys, I had to get accredited in order to be able to lead a spiritual thing. So overseas, I had reached out online to, what was it? It is sacred. There's some accrediting place that I reached out to. I can give that information later or in another episode, but there was some organization that I reached out to that got me not necessarily ordained, obviously, but kind of accredited to be able to lead a pagan service. And with that, I was allowed to have the keys so that the other gal that was leading service can go home and we can keep the trailer in motion. I was just given the best of my ability. It didn't really feel right because, truthfully, for myself, practicing in a trailer in the middle of a compound is not how I viewed the paganism anyways. So I wanted to get more out, more in nature, more into the stars, more under the lunar calendar, like more things that were much more closer to the old ways, I would say. And it was about 3 months into that when I was leaving my little hooch, my little hutch, where I lived and whatnot. And every morning I would go out. It was like 5 a.m. I'd go out. I had to have like oats that I'd take from the chow hall, and I'd throw the oats as like sort of an offering, and I'd have my morning coffee and I'd sit and I'd enjoy the sunrise and such like that. And this one morning, I remember I'd just made my coffee. I was stepping out my little door, and I have the oats in one hand and the coffee in the other, and there was an owl. Don't know what kind of owl, desert owl. Just kind of touched the top of my head and went into my hut. Now, I have 3 people in this place. Most people have 4. Now, there's 4 walls. It went straight to the back, flapped on the wall, flapped over the other guy, and then perched directly over my bed. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to fucking die. Like, this is a bad omen. Like, maybe I need to cut this out completely. But it also, the owl is a symbol of wisdom. And being that this was 3 months in, I was terrified. Honestly, I was like, this is not good. Maybe I should put this whole thing down. But when it perched directly over my bed, and I have pictures of it, it felt sort of a calming way. But I was supposed to be on my way to go meet my guys, go do our early morning physical exercise and whatnot. And I'm like, how do I get this thing out of here? And I don't want to shoo it now because technically I was inviting it in. And now I'm feeling thanked that it would accept my offering, we'll say. Now that it's perched over my bed, I'm not sure if I want to keep it here as a bad omen and I'm going to die, or if I want to shoo it out, like, so I can get to my thing at the same time. Like, if it is a good omen, I definitely don't want to shoo it out. So I was kind of torn between that whole thing. That helped me kind of, it screwed me up for most of the day, but it helped me kind of solidify what I wanted to do. Being that I didn't have much else that I could be doing at the time, I could focus a lot into studies and teaching and mentoring and that kind of thing. And I was already in a leadership position anyways, so this gave me kind of one of those things, kind of an out. So I put a lot of my focus into that, and I said, yeah, I'll go through with this. I'll give it the best of my ability. And it was about 6 more months that I had led that service sort of deal, and I got way more into it. Obviously, about 3 to 6 hours a day, every day in study, and then my personal job and whatever home life that I guess you could say I had, it fully enveloped me. So it made me kind of want to either get all the way in or all the way out. And I chose the first of the two.
That's really awesome you chose that. You wouldn't be here today without it. That's
Absolutely.
awesome with the owl. Okay, that's freaking cool.
Yeah, I don't know if Raudas can help. I'll send him the pictures, and it's kind of a crazy thing. Like I have proof of it, and it's the strangest thing. Like nothing.
Yeah, send it.
to be
Let
said.
us all see it. I'd love
Yeah,
to
we'll
see
do.
that. It's interesting. Yeah, it's weird. I remember in like the beginning of this whole thing, I said that I don't regard bird sign, like intentionally look for bird sign, because I would get obsessed with it. But that's the thing. The more that I avert my gaze or anything like that, the more I'm often seeing these things of significance. I'm in the peripheral, and it just comes more often when you're not trying to magnetize it towards you. You're just
Right.
existing, being, creature of nature.
Birds are super important. Doesn't matter where you go in the world. They're super important. You can't ignore them. Don't do that. Stop.
But no, like truthfully, I was just like Raudas when it came to that. I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket, we'll say. I don't want to be that guy who's like, oh, this is the feather. This is the reason that the ravens have come to me. Hail Odin. Like, I didn't want to be all that. Like, I get there are those type of people, and if that's who you are, by all means. But I had a different understanding of it, Like, I understand was Hugin and Munin are the thought and memory. Like, these are tales. These are oral translations that were passed down through generations in order to better pass good knowledge. I didn't want to be that guy who is like, I have the keys to a trailer. I am the new go thee with a key. Like, that's not me. Like, I didn't want to fake them. I didn't want to use crayons to write runes on I guess paper plates and then file them around. That's almost some of the things that I was seeing at some of the other locations, and that's why some of the other chaplains had reached out to me like, hey, I got a soldier in ranks who says that he is a Norse practitioner, and I'd like to see if I can have you vet him. And they'd call me up, and it was different time zones, so it could be at the worst or oddest hours, and I kind of had to accommodate that because that was my new thing. And it would be sometimes people just trying to get out, sometimes people just trying to get a beard. Some people really want to be noticed. Some people, that's their thing. I get it. You kind of look like a badass if you're that one dude with a bearded uniform. You want to pretend you're a SOG member or special forces or some kind of shit. That's cool. Wait till you get out. For me, it wasn't that. Like, it was a highly respected thing that I put off for a long time. And I knew I probably could have got it way sooner just by fake it till you make it. But I felt at that point, after teaching and then giving offering and then I guess having that creature accept, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think owls eat oats, but that was just a weird thing to me. Like, all the pieces didn't really fit. So I felt like it had answered some of what I was asking. And I was like, okay, I'll go for it. I'll wear the beard. I'll be that beacon, I guess, of whatever when it came to that. And things spiraled into control. It was nice.
What kind of level was everybody at? Was it pretty much, you're pretty knowledgeable at the time then? Was it pretty much everybody was brand new, or were there, I know you mentioned there were a few Wicca people in there. Did they kind of start like that and then gravitate to the Norse, or were they knowledgeable in other kind of native belief systems? What was that all that like?
So the gal that was initially leading it when I showed up, that was on her way back home, she was of Peruvian and Norwegian descent. So she had an understanding about the Southern American spiritual beliefs and had an influence of, say, the Norse stuff. But she was kind of a bridge between the two. So she was the one that was best educated, I guess, in that sort of thing. Secondhand gal, I guess you'd say, was a Wiccan practitioner, and she'd been Wiccan ever since, like, that was first a thing. So she definitely knew that. And with the Peruvian gal heading out, she was asking, my assistance when it came to the north side of stuff. And like I said, I didn't really want to stand out. I didn't want to do all that kind of stuff. I didn't want to be noticed, but I definitely wanted to help. And especially when you see people getting bad knowledge, when you see people getting, honestly, other things just allowed, like the exclusion. I didn't see that, but I'm just saying, like, I definitely wanted to make sure that wasn't a thing that was going to be allowed. Like, not only within spiritual practice, but in uniform, we're all green, So that was a thing. I wanted to make sure that we're all safe, happy, healthy, and accepting of each other. There's some weird people in the world. There's some weird people in uniform. It's just a smaller percentage of us, but we're the same people. When it came to questions that some people had, I didn't see correct answers. And when I say correct answers, there's multiple answers sometimes because, paganism varies widely when it comes to location, time, and tribes, like it could be the same time in two separate portions of the world and it's a whole different thing. Yeah, when I seen people asking questions and it was not answered correctly, and this is not at the one I was at, but when I was in a separate base, it was more of do as I do, gatekeeping. And I'm like, if you don't have a good explanation, why should anyone follow? Now, if you can't explain it properly, you probably don't understand it well enough. So, yeah, I took it upon myself to do that service to others. I was already military. Like it's a sacrifice that we do to serve others. It was no big deal for me to spend countless hours of service in a different way to help people, stay mentally, spiritually, emotionally, I guess, in the good.
Oh, it sounds great. I would have eaten that up if I was there. I'm someone who doesn't like to hang around with that people anyway in civilian life. When you meet up with these pagan groups, it's like 99 times out of 100, that's not people I want to hang out with. But I think it's just that kind of organization with it and people's willingness to, meet up weekly sometimes, like you said. That's a great option. And these people are not, crazy freaks living in some box underneath a bridge. Like they all have their shit together pretty much if they're in the military for the most part. So I could imagine it's a very cool bunch of people there.
Yeah, for the most part, they were well vetted, or else they wouldn't be in uniform. But on the other hand, the other side of that coin, we'll say, is if not, they are armed and dangerous. So, yeah.
Yes, that's good. That's good. That's it. Yeah, I wonder where should we speak about things? Does anyone else have any questions about his time in the military then? Or can we move on to like how he transitioned out of that and kept his practice?
I do have one question regarding that, actually. The biggest one is, why do you think that they, meaning the U.S. military, seeing as how the First Amendment exists in terms of freedom of religion and all that, took so long in order to accommodate this type of stuff with it for what's going on with it? Now, granted, there wasn't necessarily a lot of people who were Nordic persuasion, let's say, or heathenry or whatever, or even Wicca, back in the 60s onward and that kind of stuff. But there have been people that have been here that are Native Americans that have fought for us forever. There's been people that are Hindu or other religious persuasions from Asia that still have their practices that have been going on with that. And then, they only actually mentioned earlier did, the Abrahamic tradition, we'll say, and whatnot. So I'm kind of curious as to why it wasn't at one point, and then what shifted to we're kind of opening this up more now, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely a good question. I would say when it comes to why they weren't so inclusive before, in the 40s, there was the World War. So we were all hell-bent on assimilation. It didn't matter if you're Jewish, Christian, Catholic, Muslim. You're going to look exactly like us and do exactly like us because they are the enemy. You're not going to be them no matter who they were. The same thing got, I guess, even more widely used when it came to the Cold War and Korea and stuff like that. Like the military as a whole, not just a single branch, was primarily a Christian thing. Being that the vast majority of the American population was that, and the armed forces is just a very, very small population of that same people, the vast majority of the military high ranking was of, Christian background. Maybe one in a very, very few chance would be of other than Christian. I mean, very few in those early days. And same as anything government, it takes probably like 6 times longer than necessary in order to do the simple tasks. So as the trickle-down effect went and the older heads, I guess you'd say it, started getting out of service, retiring, just being done with their service, the newer, younger, fresher troops had a more of a voice. And just the same as you see in the civilian world, people are, I guess, waking up or becoming more outspoken about certain issues, and they're not getting the same backlash you would have gotten back then. So it's kind of like from tactical to practical. In the military, it goes in the reverse. From practical, then we have to adapt it in tactical. If the people are going to be X, Y, and Z, and we are, people is our number one asset, you can have all the guns, bullets, tanks, bombs at your disposal, but if you have no people to use them, you're a terrible force to, So we had to kind of adapt our ways to the people. And I actually, I credit a lot of it to the smaller faiths. Like I had a buddy who is Sikh, and he wore a digital camouflage turban. He wore a small beard and the silver bracelet in uniform. Like that was allowed. And because little things like that stood out, he was proud to be of who he was. And that was before the real inclusion of stuff. But it's because of things like that, other ones started getting noticed, and other people started raising their hands and saying, hey, I'm not Sikh, I'm, X, Y, or Z. This is my faith. This is my practice. This is who I am. And it's an investment thing when you think about military. If you put hundreds of thousands of dollars into training this soldier, now he comes out of the broom closet and says, I'm Wiccan or Pagan or heathen or whatever the case may be, you don't want to throw all that money away. You'd rather retain that soldier. You'd rather retain that knowledge so that he can train others, regardless of his faith or background.
Yeah, so I don't know if it was mentioned, I might have got lost, but did you, when you were leaving and exiting your role, it sounds like you did a lot for it, but I was curious, did you find someone to hand it off to yourself? How did you keep this momentum of energy cycling and being able to go to the next person?
Again, great question. That, honestly, I wish I could have done it better. Now, I don't feel I did a disservice in any way. I did have someone else gain the credentials necessary in order to have the key, hold the key, and keep things up and running. But no, from what I had heard, when I rotated out, when I headed back home, things took a hard downturn, and it wasn't necessarily because person A or person B had lesser knowledge, lesser drive, lesser will, or time to do the research, but it was more, I had got in the swing of things. I had accepted it fully, and I was prepared and happily performing service for others. When I headed out, it was probably about 2 months before that I was like, hey, somebody's got to take this key. Somebody's got to, take this torch where I left off. And same as, I can totally understand. Not everybody wants to take that. Not everybody wants to take that, not only additional duty as we see it, but the responsibility to say, hey, this went from 6 people to 26 people, consistent. And like, if I fumble, if I fall, it looks bad upon you. When the truth is, good to you for giving it your all, good to you for trying something new, and great to them for having that opportunity to keep the doors open just a little bit longer. So that's kind of how it went. It did kind of get a little LARPy. It did get a little off for a while, but then all the guys that I was over there with, all the guys and gals, they had all rotated out soon. So I kind of lost contact with the area of operation that we were out of. but I still maintained contact with all the practitioners that were there.
It's got to be difficult because people who are probably new to paganism still have an Abrahamic perception or a Christian perception from when they were in it. So they probably do look at you as the chaplain, which I grew up in a military academy all through high school. So, like, I wasn't in the military, but I was there with people who had been in the military all their lives and got to, they tried to make it was a LARP, I guess, but, pretty intense. But yes, I was familiar with the chaplain and the roles that they played and everything like that. And, I'm imagining that in a lot of cases, people, since you were the figure to go to for a religious crisis or religious guidance in some capacity, right? You're kind of the head of this. You must have had to bear a lot of emotional weight with the personal lives behind people's eyes that came to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes it's hard stuff. Like, I can't say too much, but I did have soldiers that came there for help, for guidance, for mental issues. Not everybody's okay all the time, especially in those kind of situations. And things happen, and it's definitely harder for someone, say, coming from an Abrahamic faith to pretty much shit can all of that idea, understand this path is nowhere near the same as that, and then kind of soul search for self when you're going through some personal issues. It's a difficult thing to deal with, and that's not only for themselves, but as far as someone like me, that I didn't raise my hand to be that in life. It just became something that I fell into and was honored to have the ability to lead such things. And yeah, it's rough. Like, when I was 28 and I'm teaching 45-year-old guys how to change their life. So when you're thrown into this situation, it could be something like a 20-year vet that's got multiple combat deployments who's just transitioned over from, say, a monotheistic faith to this heathen background because of his genealogy. And when he comes at it, from a skewed aspect, and this is what I know of because this is what I've been told because of bad information that was passed down, and you, new in this, have to calm or, give them a right direction. Sometimes it can get tense.
Nice. Did you have something prepared typically for when you held these ceremonies, whatever you'd like to refer to them as long as I'm not being disrespectful, but did you have a prayer that was sort of made among you guys, or something that you guys all agreed on became part of the PAX mantra?
Yeah, we we did. And again, I just had to come up with something, you know what I mean? Because a lot of these people already had, well, when I started off, I was taking over where someone else left off. I don't practice the same as them, and they don't practice the same as me. So I had to find sort of a blend between the two of them that help with transition, or else I'd have lost everybody. Doesn't no good to have a key to an empty trailer. So, yeah, I wrote, I guess you'd say, sort of a poem to begin with. There were majority Wiccan at the beginning, so it was more like, I wish I had it with me right now. I could recite it perfectly, but it was more along the lines of everybody'd come in, we'd all sit in our little chairs and greet and, hey, what's going on? And then the same as opening up something like this, it was, all right, if we're good to begin, I'd pull out a candle, I'd set it on the table, I'd light this candle to light a way of the path in remembrance of those in the past, to shine a light on the future for those of us that. It was kind of like a prayer. It was something like that was just kind of a thing for all of us to open up, because in, I guess, the Wiccan faith, it was like a hail to the north, south, east, and west, and opening up a circle. So
An invocation.
Yeah. So I wanted to keep it semi-similar, at least, with something that we can all agree on. And yeah, from there, because the lunar calendar, there's only a full moon or a new moon every 28 days. That doesn't necessarily work when you're doing weekly gatherings. So what I did to help myself, and maybe this is cheating, but it seems to work in many different ways, is on one of my first sort of gatherings, meetings, I passed out some cards, these little flashcards type of deal. And I said, hey, write down on this something that you guys would like to learn more about, had some questions in. Don't put your name on it, just so that I could take this, help me, do my research. And it gives me sort of a few backlogged things that I can kind of go over the 3 and 4 weeks. And then depending on the season, what holidays that we would celebrate. And they're typically the exact same holidays as you have on the calendar behind you.
So you had that as well. You had weekly meetings, just kind of informal lectures almost, where people could ask questions and things like that, like a church session, mass. But then you had the special events that would come up at certain times of year as well that you did something more unique for.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I looked at it as, and it was more of an educational, like you came there to gain knowledge about what this is. We're not doing, Sunday mass. That's not what this is about. If there is a holiday or a special celebration, 90% of that's probably a legal uniform anyways. Like, one of the things that I was pretty adamant about is, say, sacrifice. One of the other groups got hit pretty hard because of sacrifice. Now, they wanted to do a blood sacrifice and kill a bird. I'm like, first of all, it's not your bird. Then you're taking the life of something else. Then there's PETA and all the kind of shit that goes into it. Like, you're not killing animals on a military post. That's very, very bad. Then, the outside view of it, my God, they're not pagan, satanic. And it's breached the military. Like, I didn't want any of that issue. So I let them know that a sacrifice has to be something that you personally are sacrificing. Now, if you come from a farming background, a sacrifice might have been your prized animal. At different times of the year, yes, you have to get rid of them because you can't sustain that kind of life in those seasons. So it was largely educational based when it come to that kind of stuff. And then the celebratory parts that, with the Norse calendar not being the same as other parts of the globe, I included some things like Samhain. I included some things like Lupercalia. I included some things like the yearly walk. I pulled a little bit of this and a little bit of that just in order to kind of make things work, because you're only going to be there for a certain amount of time. You can't celebrate all these holidays. In truth, if they'd asked me to stay for another deployment, that would have probably happened had I not had a family back home.
Yeah, has to be pretty intense, I would imagine, doing pagan rituals and pagan ceremonies, especially when you're in the military. It's a very intense environment. It's a very brotherly environment, which the Norse probably appeals to that. And the aspect of war just hangs over your head at every moment. A lot of those battle cries and poems probably did involve speaking and singing about war. So it's probably very, very compelling and very, touches the heart in a different way than it would for a civilian.
Right. Yeah. And then, definitely depending on the different MOS or job titles that these guys and gals hold, like some of these guys were chopper mechanics. Some of these guys were signaliers or like computer electronics. Some of these guys and gals, like they did tracked vehicle maintenance. Like somebody could work on a tank. Somebody could be on a helicopter. Somebody could be a door kicker, wig splitter, while another guy is just a computer nerd. Like, you'd never really know who you're dealing with. And all of us came there for the same reasons. And there was a couple that popped in, didn't like what they seen. They preferred the LARP and they disappeared. And that's fine by me. Like I said, I wasn't trying to say, come ye child, this is the way. Definitely not. I was like, this is what I know. This is how I practice. This is how I see my reciprocity, whether it's to the gods, to my fellow man, to whichever the case may be.
Yeah. Well, would you think some things, but before we finish, I wanted to touch on this really, building the community, building up people around you. I mean, what you had there is a dream for even me and a lot of people who are going to be watching, a group of 24 people that you get together regularly with. that's something really special. Of course, that would, well, like we already spoke about before, that would be easier than some sort of military setting where people have them, are there and they don't have a whole lot else to do in the evenings like normal civilians would. And then people are properly vetted, so you make sure there's no weirdos coming in. What are some tips that you could give someone, maybe to both some tips that you could give someone in the military that would want to be bringing together a community like that, and what can you learn from that to bring maybe into civilian life?
Well, for one, definitely community means a hell of a lot. I noticed that then. I didn't really notice it as much before. I like to look at myself as a solo practitioner, or in the broom closet, or whatever you want to call it. When it came to that, like, I didn't want to associate with a lot of people because there are weirdos out there. And the last thing I wanted was to tarnish my image or my name because I associated with the wrong person, not knowing exactly who they were. So vetting, I would say, is primary. That is the number one most important thing, because you don't want to get the wrong information, the wrong people. But at the same time, trust. Like, if you don't open yourself up, as I did, you'd never have that chance in the first place. So sometimes you are going to get some bad apples, and it's up to us to nix that as soon as we find it, or to put things in place that prohibit that from happening.
Old Russian saying, trust but verify.
Yeah, that's also a military term as well. Yeah. But when it comes to community, whether it's there, I guess, overseas, military-wise, or here stateside, or America. Over there, I think they pretty much got a good handle on things. It all comes from the heart, and it comes from good source information. As far as holidays and such like that, it's pretty simple. Honestly, like I said, with the calendar you have behind you, anybody with good common sense and an understanding of, I guess, animism, storytelling, and how these myths, legends, and ancestor worship came to be. I guess you could study in on those things if you have any issues, but anybody that has a good idea already with those kind of things and uses a bit of common sense should be able to kind of keep things within the lines, we'll say. But when it comes to civilians, whether it's the US or abroad, gathering, that's something that I'd actually still like to be a big part of as well. So I would say, yes, the vetting, making sure that everybody is not only on board with the idea, because you got to have a direction. Without a direction, you'll be herding cats, and that shit's not going to happen. So by having a structured idea, say a calendar, and sort of that go-to guy that leads things, or at least sways them in a correct direction, things shouldn't get out of hand. What I found in the Norse pagan community is, for the most part, it's honor anyways. Like, nobody really wants to get too wild. Everybody has a similar, like, brotherly atmosphere about it, and we're all trying to regain the old ways to the best of our abilities anyways. Even if you're brand new in it and you think it is about going to the Ren Fair and carrying a rubber axe and wearing plastic horns, like, if that's you, by all means, be you, but don't be unteachable. There's a lot of people out there that have good information, good knowledge, and they actually want to see better for you. Hell, you could still be, one of those guys on the weekends. You could still be one of those guys Monday through Friday. I have one of the guys that was actually at the group that worked as an entertainer at the Sherwood Forest. I was actually thinking about having him come on this show. And some of them are Norse practitioners. Some of them love the medieval times. Like, you could still be strange, fun, silly, whatever the case is. We're all human here. But when it comes to, say, spirituality and such, people hold that to a very high regard. And I don't think anybody's trying to disrespect it as long as they come there with the right ideas.
Yeah, very good advice. We could all use that. Same advice applies, just different strategies and the resources, right? If you're on a base, easier to gather people, have a place to host them. That it makes it a lot harder in civilian life when people are so far away. But the same the same principles would apply to both. So that's great advice for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good place to wrap it up. We got an hour, and I'm gonna love rewatching this because there's a lot of really amazing sage advice and some brilliant delivery. Yeah,
Finally.
it was a very moving episode. Yeah, this is very powerful. I'm glad that you shared. I really appreciate it.
Believe me, like I said, I can go on and on. There's a lot of times when I'm here, I don't want to overstep. I want to hear everybody else as well. You guys all have amazing stories. It's just we got to hear that. We got to give it time to work its way out.
Yeah. Well, whatever you did for I think the whatever happened for the internet worked great. I mean, it just came through perfect the entire time. So that was really good.
Good.
I'm gonna go ahead and just